The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Samantha Carvalho. The purpose of this presentation is to go over the 2016 CHIP application. We're going to go over it section by section and spend a little bit of time going over some of the key program requirements that I think you should consider before you apply. Once funds are awarded, I will host a series of short webinars to go over the program requirements in greater detail. I plan on uploading a lengthier policy and procedures manual for this program in the next coming weeks so that you can read about the program requirements in more detail. And you can always contact me and ask me questions as you go along and you're working through this application. So what is DCA's goal for the 2016 funds? What do we want to accomplish with this money? We want to locate funds and make investments in communities where there is the most need and in communities with the most ability to spend the funds wisely and comply with all the federal requirements, and to use these funds to contribute to other local housing efforts. The 2016 application is for $4 million in the federal HUD Home Investment Partnership Funds. Maximum awards will be for $300,000 for rehab activities and $600,000 for new construction activities plus 2% in admin. Eligible activities include homeowner rehabilitation assistance and or new construction for single-family homes for resale. And I want to clarify that when I mean homeowner rehab, what we mean by that is that you can use this money to fix up someone's home, but then you can also use it that if you find a person whose home is the condition is so bad that it really would be better to reconstruct it, to demolish it and reconstruct it, you can use that money, the rehab money, for that too. What new construction means is that you would be building a new home on a vacant lot for resale. Oh, and let me go back to, I want to say another thing too about this. So if you want to apply for rehab only, then there's a $300,000 cap for that. If you want to apply for new construction, that's $600,000. But if you want to do a mix of activities, you can apply for $600,000, and then you can say how much of that money you want for new construction and how much of it you want for rehab. I wanted to put this slide up in front just in case some of you are in these communities, and that way you don't have to sit through the rest of the presentation. We will not be able to use our state home funding to help cities and counties that receive their own HUD home allocation. Those communities are called participating jurisdictions, and they won't be eligible for this money. And in addition, for this round of funding, we will also not be funding current CHIP grantees that have more than 50% in unspent funds. Now, we have a lot of grantees that have unspent 2014 funds, and that's why we wanted to open up the 2016 round for other communities so that we can have a better geographic distribution for the funding. If you are in a situation where you have a 2014 grant or another grant that has more than 50% unspent funds right now, but you think that you will be able to spend that money down by July of 2016, then please indicate that somewhere in your application so that we can give you consideration for that. And you can also contact me in advance and we can discuss this issue for you. The deadline for this application will be Friday, March 18th at 4 p.m. You can hand deliver it or you can put it in the mail on Friday. We will notify you of receipt of your application the following Wednesday, and awards will be announced no later than June 1st. The application consists of 10 sections with a maximum of 100 points. The submission packet that you'll send in will be your application form, a certificate form, your match form, a $250 application fee, and for nonprofits, you will also need to attach your IRS designation letter. Please submit one original and 3 copies, so 4 total. And if you're including things that are in color, please be sure that all your copies have color in them. I wanted to cover this first, and then we'll go over each section. I wanted to show you the point distribution here. 40% of the points will go to your community need and your community planning. and 60% will go to your ability to carry out the grant. And like I said, we'll go through each one of these points as we go through each section. So this slide is just for some of the sections that are a little self-explanatory. Section 1 is for general information. We're awarding 5 points to communities that have not yet received CHIP funding in the last 5 rounds, which means if your community has not received funding in the 2011 through 2014 round of CHIP, then you'll receive 5 points. Section 2 and Section 3 are just general information. Section 4 through 9 we'll cover in the next slides, and Section 10 is your certification. The certification document is in your application instructions packet. It starts on page 8. And essentially what this is it's a certification that needs to be signed by your applicant certifying representative. It certifies that your applicant governing body has duly adopted and passed an official act, resolution, motion, or similar action, and you have to attach evidence of this action with this application. Section 4, community need. This is the first section with substantial information that I need. It's 20 points, and it's 10 points for your census poverty data and 10 points for a narrative, a need narrative. The link that I have here links to a map on the DCA's website, and I'm going to cover it in the next slide, how to use it. The 10 points for the data-driven narrative, what this is I didn't put in any specific requirements for exactly what kind of data to include because I know that all communities are different. If you have a housing study that you can use, that would be ideal, but I understand that not a lot of communities have that. I also think that one good source of data for determining the need for rehabs in your community would be code enforcement data, which is great for a community that may have both the finances to do code enforcement and also some communities may have the finances to do code enforcement, but they may not be enforcing the code and citing households for code violations because they don't want to create a burden on their community to have to pay the fines. And so you may not have data. 2, I think universal sources of data that you will be able to use would be tax data, so you'd be able to see the ages of the homes and the value of the homes. You can also use real estate data to determine the market for if you're doing new construction, if there are similar houses on the market that are similarly priced and sized, and let's say they stay on the market for 60 days or less, there might be an indication there that there is a strong need for that kind of housing. Overall, though, I think it's really important for you to try to make a compelling case for why you need this funding. Many communities across the state of Georgia have a housing need, but it's nice to be able to see how you are able to express that need through data. I also wanted to point out for this section and all the other sections in the application, and this is in the instructions too, to please limit your responses to less than 1 page. In the application, there are text boxes that you can fill in, and I would prefer if you would limit your responses to just 1 page or less. Oh, let me go back and say one more thing. On the other hand, if you do have a community study that you'd like to attach and include, please include that. That would be wonderful to see. This is the map that I was talking about. This is on the DCA website. The way you would use this map to determine your census poverty rate is to go to the left side. There's a box that says content, and you would unclick all of the ones besides the poverty from 2010 through 2014, and then you would go to the top right box where you would put in an address or a place or a city, county, that any kind of location that you would want to search for, and then a box will pop up and that'll give you your percent poverty. Section 5 is about GICH. So we are awarding 10 points for GICH communities. GICH communities, that's the Georgia Initiative for Community Housing, and I included a link for more information about that. This is a program where communities can apply for technical assistance from staff at UGA. They get 3 years of assistance to develop their local plan to meet their local housing needs. We are offering points in this area because we want to incentivize communities to participate in GICH, and we want to link funding to proactive steps you're taking in your community to address your housing needs. And we also wanted to make sure that if you are a GICH community, that your community is active. In other words, that you meet regularly and that you maintain a relationship with your housing partners, and you have been implementing your strategy and reevaluating your strategy as you go along. Section 6, Community Revitalization. This is an additional 5 points where we would just like you to explain how CHIP funding will assist you with your overall community revitalization and how you're going to be using CHIP funds to improve your neighborhoods. And we would also like to know which partners you're bringing on board to assist with this, either for housing counseling or for other resources that you might be using with this program. Section 7 is grant management capacity. This is 25 points. Essentially what this is just to gauge your fiscal capacity, your record retention capacity, and your general grants management experience with managing federal programs, particularly with managing home. You're going to receive the most points in this section if you have had direct experience managing and successfully managing the CHIP program, and then you'll receive fewer points, but still quite a bit of points if you've managed home funding and CDBG funding and other home funding. Section 8 is project management. This is the section with the most amount of points. The first section has 10 points, and this is your affirmative marketing plan. It is extremely important that you provide equal chances for everyone in your community to be able to benefit from this program. And this means having a creative marketing strategy that will help you reach out to people who are very difficult to reach and people who might not have an opportunity to participate in programs. So we want to see specifically how you're going to address reaching out to people who are disabled, people who are non-English speakers, and groups that might not be reading the newspaper or other means to get information about this program so that they can benefit from it too. And then the other section is about your experiencing managing these types of programs from start to finish. So how are you going to advertise this program? How are you going to document your participants' eligibility? How are you going to procure the contractors and provide the project oversight from start to finish? And then how are you going to be able to close out the program? Section 9 is the budget. I just want to point out the match points. So you will receive 5 points if you are providing 15% or more in match. The match can come from, it can either be cash that your government or your nonprofit is providing. It can be from foregoing taxes and fees. It can be from donating professional services or donating the home buyer counseling that is necessary for the home buyer portion of this. What would be ineligible would be anything that the home buyer or the homeowner is contributing. I included 2 brief budget examples. The budget table that's in your application has a little more than this, but I wanted to include these to give you an idea of what you can do with the money in this grant. And to also point out a couple of things, we are limiting the project delivery cost to $3,000 and the admin to a maximum of 2% or $6,000. And in your application instructions, I give a few examples of what it means to be, project delivery costs and admin are, the difference between the two. For example, project delivery costs would include costs in preparing the environmental review, processing the home buyer's applications, housing counseling, and project underwriting. Admin would be costs associated with providing citizens with information about the CHIP program and outreach, preparing your own budget and schedule, preparing reports and documents to DCA, your office space and utility costs, and other things related to administering the program. For new construction, again, I use a very simplified budget for this. to show you a couple of things, we are allowing a maximum of 15% or up to $20,000 for developer fees and 5% for those similar project delivery costs and a maximum of 2% for admin. Okay, so after those were all the sections of the application. Now what I want to talk to you about is just a couple of really important HUD requirements having to do with the home program. There are a lot more to discuss about the home program, which I will follow up with in webinars. If you as the applicant are awarded the funding, then I plan on hosting a series of shorter webinars that focus on specific program requirements having to do with how do you meet the HUD home requirements as well as the DCA project management requirements for this grant. But just briefly, so that you have an idea of what this program requires, I'm going to go over a couple of slides having to do with that. The first one is this home buyer responsibilities. We're asking home buyers to contribute $1,000 into the program. The home buyer must receive housing counseling. This is a home requirement. The counseling fee must not exceed $100 and can be included as your project delivery costs or can be added to the homeowner's $1,000 contribution. And you can use a local housing counseling agency. If you need assistance in finding one in your area, I'd be happy to help you locate one. We also have underwriting requirements, and I included the section in the regulations so that you can read them if you'd like to. It's Part 92. 92 is the part having to do with home funds, and then Section 250 is underwriting requirements. And essentially what this is that when HUD issued the new home rules in 2013, they became a lot stricter with what they required for verifying that home buyers are ready to purchase, that they have a good debt to income ratio, and that essentially they are going to be able to maintain their housing with assistance with this program. Also, there is the affordability period requirement. This assistance to home buyers is not a loan, and it's not necessarily a grant. What we use is what we call declining balance recapture, and I have the citation for the HUD Community Planning and Development Notice that was issued in 2012. It's notice number 3, which goes over this section if you want to read it. Essentially what this means is for homeowner rehab, they have to maintain their house. The homeowner has to stay in their house for 5 years. If the homeowner decides to sell their house halfway through, around 2 or 3 years, then they will have to pay us back 50% of what we contributed to reconstructing their home. If the house goes under foreclosure, however, they won't have to pay anything back to us. So it's 5 years for rehab, it's 10 years for reconstruction, and it's 15 years for new construction. This is a slide I wanted to include for you. It's an example of our obligation to HUD to spend this funding down within 5 years. The project deadline is related to our commitment from DCA to HUD. We have a 12-month maximum time frame between when we set up your programs in our accounting system to HUD, which is IDIS, and when we do your first draw. And then we have 4 years to go from the beginning of your project to the end of your project with the project sale. For new construction, when you're selling a house, you will have 9 months between when your construction completes to when you sell the house. If you can't sell the house in 9 months to someone, then the house reverts to a rental property, and you will have to maintain it as a rental property for 20 years, which means you have to do the maintenance for it, and you have to make sure that all of the tenants are income eligible. So it's very important that we meet that 9-month deadline, and the way that we can do that is to first be sure that when you do your market assessment that you are very clear about the ability to sell the house. So you don't want to build a house somewhere where it's not going to sell. And it also might be helpful to have the homeowner lined up so that when the construction is completed, that person can move in. Another HUD requirement is that for all home-funded projects, you have to ensure that that the household that is assisted, all of the members of the household, are under 80% of the area median income. And the way that you find out what the area median income is for your community is to go to the HUD Section 8 income threshold website. There's a link here, but you can also Google this. And what you'll do is you'll select Georgia, and then you'll select your county, and then it'll show you a list of the income by 30%, 50%, and 80% of area median income. All of your construction projects have to meet property standards. They must meet the HUD Uniform Physical Condition Standards. You also have to meet the following codes. And then if you have any local codes that go beyond this, you'll have to meet those as well. And in addition to that, you will have vistability standards, which are essentially making sure that the home is accessible. This is the end of the presentation. I wanted to show you some resources that you can use. Contact me if you need to. I am available anytime to do any conference calls if you need to set something like that up with people in your community to discuss this in further detail. I included the DCA website where you can access the application and other information about it. I gave you a link to the HUD Home Rule so that you can read through that if you have specific questions about how the home program will relate to your application. We have a wonderful DCA outreach staff who are available to meet with you in your office. And if you need to, this link actually goes to a map where you can see which regional staff person is for your area. We also have a wonderful relationship with our regional commissions. Many of them have administered CHIP funding in the past very successfully, and they may be able to administer your grant for you. In many cases, you may find that you do not have the adequate staff in your local government to administer this program, but you want your citizens to benefit from this. You may be able to have staff from the Regional Commission administer for you. In addition, we have a wonderful group of grant administrators who have been working with the CHIP program for years and years very successfully, and many of them are throughout the state of Georgia. And if you need to contact one of them to see if they want to administer your grant, feel free to contact me and tell me where you are, and I'll try to connect you with someone in your area. Finally, I included a list of links. These are from the other sections of the application, and the presentation, and these are where you can access more information. So again, I want to thank you very much for listening to this presentation and for your interest in the CHIP program. DCA is very strongly committed in providing affordable housing throughout the state of Georgia, and it's through partnership with you that we were able to make that happen. I hope that you'll consider applying, and I hope that we can have a successful partnership in making sure that we can rebuild and build new houses in Georgia.